Hello, this is Taylor Davis with KLAS Research. I'm the Director of Analysis here, and I'm glad to be here and be able to present some new research that we've been doing. This webinar is follow-up to a white paper that we published very recently, and hopefully we'll answer some of your questions that you might have about the new KLAS Fingerprint, customer fingerprint. Before I jump into this, I want to talk about real quick not what the fingerprint is and what today's webinar is, but what it is not. While KLAS measures customer satisfaction and we are committed to helping vendors perform better and to help their customers be more satisfied, today we're not actually talking about improving customer satisfaction. We're talking about using customer satisfaction feedback in order to understand what the market needs and wants in buying decisions and retention decisions. Essentially, we're looking at the link between customer satisfaction and product success. We're glad that you were able to make it. Before we jump in, I want to just explain a little bit about the team that I lead up. It's called the Performance Insight Team, and I'm just going to click through some of these. The bottom line is that there's a decent chance, if you're listening to this call, that I have been in your boardroom personally or someone on my team has. Our Performance Insight group was started about 2 years ago. We really started because many vendors, we felt like were honestly really wanting to improve, and in some cases wanting to use KLAS data to improve, but because KLAS accepts anonymous evaluations, or at least we report them anonymously, it's somewhat difficult at times to really understand what can move the needle to improve customer satisfaction and improve performance in the marketplace. And our Performance Insight team is now, as I said, 2 to 3 years old, and our goal is to work with different vendors, and we've had great reception. And anybody that I've worked with out there, I appreciate the time that you've given us. Is our desire is to come in and help you improve how you deliver technology and service to your customers, so that they can be more successful and you can be more successful in the future. So some of the things that we do as we come in, these are some of the tools in our tool belt, if you will. As we come in and we take your data and we break it out by all sorts of different possible breakouts, depending on the hospital size or number of physicians or whatever. We look at all sorts of different types of trending. And are you getting better, or are customers reporting worse satisfaction today than a year ago? We look a lot at the outliers, the most unsatisfied customers. Why are they out there? Why are they reporting the most frustration? Customers who are leaving, etc. We do a lot of work with comments, customer comments, more actually than this slide talks about, as far as scanning for the verbatim comments and looking for trends within those comments. But this also brings us to one of our newest tools, which is the KLAS Correlation Fingerprint. Now we have done for some customers, but I'm not even listing it here just because it's not ubiquitously applicable. We have done some more complex modeling and some of those type of things, but the reason why we're focusing today on the KLAS Customer Fingerprint is that it gives a really good view of customer satisfaction, sort of a one snapshot view of customer satisfaction, and it also is a good indication of how strong a product is going to be in the future as far as sales and service. Anyway, so a key part of coming into your boardrooms, and something that we've been using for about a year now, is the KLAS Customer Fingerprint. As we meet with you, and today, our goal more than anything else, our promise to you and also to your customers. I personally spend some time on the phone. I work with about 30 CIOs from across the country, and a good number of other directors and CNOs and CEOs. And as I'm sitting in your boardroom giving you feedback about how well your product is meeting their needs, I always feel like on my shoulder I have the voice of some of these customers who I spent some good time with on the phone or in person, and their expectations that they've been kind enough to give us their time, they expect to give you very straight feedback, very clear feedback, actionable findings that will help you improve, and then our promise to you is that we're going to give you experience-based recommendations. Anyway, jumping into what we wanted to talk about today, the link between customer satisfaction and product success, sales, market success, business success. 10 years ago, Fred Reichheld published a Harvard business case paper and talking about the Net Promoter Score. I assume that almost everyone on this call has heard about the Net Promoter Score before, although I'm going to quickly just talk about the history of it real quick. The Net Promoter Score is essentially, the question was this: if you could measure one thing and one thing only within your customer base that you use to understand if you're on target or not with your delivery, what would that be? And Fred Reichheld argues that if you ask your customers any questions you should ask, how likely are you to recommend the product that you're using today? And came up with a somewhat ingenious way of measuring this question and sort of an intuitive way of thinking about it, if you will. Here this is, KLAS uses something somewhat similar. We call it the KLAS Evangelism Score. We use a 9-point scale, whereas Fred Reichheld used a 10-point scale, 11-point scale, sorry. And the idea, though, is that you have those customers who rate very highly when asked this question, how likely are you to recommend, here highlighted in the blue, and those would be your promoters. And then you have those customers who are just sort of neutral, rate sort of middle of the road. And then you have a few of those customers who are really frustrated, and you would call those your detractors. In order to get your Net Promoter Score, what you have to do is you have to take your percentage of your customer base that are promoters and subtract the percentage of your customer base that are detractors. So in this case, for this product, and this is just an example product, 49% of the customers could be categorized as promoters, or in KLAS speak we call them evangelists. 14% would be the detractors, the naysayers, and which would give you a 35% Net Promoter Score. Something I want to highlight, though, not in criticism of the Net Promoter Score, because I think that there's a lot of good things there, essentially adding to the Net Promoter Score, if you will, and then highlighting some of the occasional weaknesses with the Net Promoter Score. I just want to highlight that the why of a customer recommendation matters just as much, if not more, than the if of a customer recommendation. Let me give you an example why. My wife and myself, one of our favorite dates, we have young kids, so getting out is a must. And when we get out, one of our favorite dates is to go find a restaurant that we've never been to before. And we really enjoy eating something that we've never eaten before. So we always have our ear to the ground about any new restaurants that have come up. And a couple months ago, we ate at just an absolutely horrid restaurant. And as I think back about the recommendations that we received from multiple people about this restaurant, nobody said that the food was good. Everybody mentioned the atmosphere of the restaurant. And actually, that kept going through my mind as we sat eating just cold food that should be hot, and just it really had a bad experience. But the atmosphere of the restaurant was really cool. And however, I care more about the food than I care about the atmosphere. And maybe some of my friends care more about the atmosphere than they care about the food. But if you think about it, from now on, when somebody gives me a recommendation for a restaurant, I'm going to say, why did you recommend that restaurant? And I'm looking for one thing in particular. So if somebody says, the service is really good, the atmosphere is great, they have a great location, it's really cheap, or even something like, I love their minty toothpicks. I don't know if I've ever heard that before. I just threw that in. Those are not going to maybe necessarily get me to go to that restaurant. However, they have amazing food. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that matters to me more than anything else. I guess depending on the occasion, decent food paired with an amazing atmosphere or a really close location could be good enough. And but the why behind a recommendation matters quite a bit. Let me give an example here. So KLAS measures 120 different market segments. And to give an example between the if and the why the why can matter so much. KLAS measures about 120 market segments. taken somewhat at random, but I think a good example nonetheless is the staff scheduling market segment. For those of you who are not familiar with this, let me explain a little bit. And for any of you vendors who happen to have a product in the space, I apologize. Please know I'm not trying to pick on anyone here. And I have Kronos Workforce Scheduler highlighted in orange. I actually probably could highlight API staff scheduling because I'm going to be talking about that product also. In this market segment, there's a few things that are really quite important for customers. A lot of customers, as they go to buy a new product, they're looking for integration with their time and attendance system. And they're also looking for, as the economy gets worse and labor costs are tricky, they're looking for a product that can really handle their human capital for the years to come. And so we notice a lot of buying happening in this space, a lot of really energetic decisions. And by energetic, I mean IT is saying one thing, finance is saying, business office is saying another thing, and nursing is asking for another thing. And anyway, if we look, though, just at customers that we're surveying, and we say, and we look at the KLAS evangelism score for major players, McKesson, Ansos, and Clairvia have the highest the highest KLAS evangelism scores in this market, followed by Concero, followed by Kronos, and then at the very end, API. What's also really interesting, just as a side note for us, is we track how often customers are coming online and looking at different products. Now, McKesson Ansos, by our watch, has the largest customer base out of any of these products. So it's not surprising that McKesson Ansos, that there are more providers looking at McKesson Ansos than looking at any other product, as they just have a large customer base that would be coming in and looking at their solution. However, who's getting the most looks? So there's McKesson Ansos, but then API and Kronos are getting a lot more looks than some of the other products in the space. Well, that's interesting because they have a lower, customers are spending more time looking at their products, but they have a lower Net Promoter Score. And they actually have, by the way, lower KLAS scores also. If we also look at wins that KLAS has come across, this is not a perfectly random sample, but I do think that it's somewhat representative of what we're hearing. We're seeing more wins from Kronos and from API than we're seeing from almost anyone else in the space, although we are coming across some wins for everyone else. So still a competitive market, but the lion's share of wins that we're hearing out there are going to Kronos and to API. So this really begs the question. This is not a unique market segment where you see really happy customers, high Net Promoter Score, high evangelism score, high KLAS scores, but we're not seeing new sales, and we're actually seeing some customer turnover from some of these high satisfaction products. It makes you scratch your head for a minute and say, well, what's going on here, right? I would argue that the reason why this is happening is the why behind the recommendation and not the if. So let me give an example of, now we get into what is the KLAS Fingerprint. You can take a look at here. So here are customer ratings for Kronos from high to low. Supports integration goals is where Kronos customers give Kronos the highest marks, down to quality of implementation getting the lowest marks. And what would be really, really helpful as we look at these ratings, though, is to have some sort of idea of which of these questions or areas is today more of a focus, is more important for customers. One way that we can do that is we can just correlate each of these different questions to the customer rating for overall satisfaction. Let me just give an example of what this would mean. I was working with a product the other day. We work with the data of lots of products. And I was working in the data of a product the other day, and lots of customers, almost all customers reported that the training was amazing. So almost all customers gave training on our 1 to 9 scale, somewhere between a 7 and a 9. However, about 30% of customers were rating their overall satisfaction around a 2 or a 3. It really begs the question of what's driving the overall satisfaction. It seems as though training really is not driving satisfaction for that product. Even though training is good for everyone, it's not enough to make up, and in this case there were some real product difficulties. So even though training is great, it's not making up for the product difficulties. And you could argue that to customers currently, not just in general, but currently, it's less of a focus and it's less important for customers. So a low correlation essentially would just mean that if you know the customer rating for this one question, you don't really have a good idea as to what their overall satisfaction is. A high correlation means if you know that they're happy with this, then they're probably happy with the product. For that same product, customer ratings for product quality mirrored really closely overall satisfaction ratings. So there's a few customers who hadn't run into any problems, and they rated high as far as their satisfaction on overall product quality. And just if you knew that one question, you probably knew that they were going to rate high for overall product quality, for overall satisfaction. And those who rated low for overall product quality also rated low for overall satisfaction. So that's a much more important question, much more of a focus for customers currently. So if we take these questions and we map them according to the correlation along the y-axis there, you can see which questions are more of a focus, more important for customers, and which are not. Let me bring this view forward, and this is kind of our standard KLAS customer fingerprint view. To the right are those questions which are more highly correlated, i.e. more of a focus, more important today, and to the left are those questions that are less important. And you can see here that integration is the biggest focus for customers currently for Kronos. This maps exactly to what we hear from a lot of Kronos customers. We really like Kronos, and the reason why we do is because it's integrated. And however, quality of implementation is probably is pretty important to customers and is rated low. And so, hey, this is important to us, and this is an area where Kronos could really improve. So if you're looking at anywhere that they could improve, it seems as though quality of implementation would be a good place to start. So why buy Kronos? The bottom line is that it's integrated. So if a customer is saying, hey, why do you like Kronos? Why would you give them a recommendation? Many customers buy this view, and from what we hear in the industry, would say, I think I'd recommend Kronos because it's integrated. And because we can see that results in a good number of sales out there in the industry, it seems as though that reasoning resonates well with potential customers and is a good why in terms of why to buy Kronos. Let's talk about some of the other products in this market segment. We're just using this as an example. Why buy Kinsero? Why buy McKesson? Why buy Clairvia? Why buy API? Reading the fingerprint is a little bit tricky. It takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around. Once you do, it's an incredibly powerful tool. In some ways, I like the term fingerprint when we were naming it. I had to name it something. And I like the term fingerprint because I don't know how to read a fingerprint. I could not tell you if two fingerprints are the same, unless I guess I looked at them for a really long time. But there are definitely people who know how to look and just say, okay, there's a bifurcation here, there's a core here, there's a ridge ending here, there's an island here, and know how to read a fingerprint. And a fingerprint can be an incredibly powerful tool at identifying individuals, just as the customer fingerprint can be very identifying of what's going on with a vendor product. So let's talk about some examples here. Now you'll notice as we run through some of these different fingerprints that the y-axis changes for each of these different products. The fingerprint is simply a measurement of how is the vendor performing in different areas relative to itself. And that's really important. I'm going to come back to that here in a minute. But as you look through here with Kinsero, you can see that product response time. Why would you buy Kinsero? Well, it's a pretty fast product. Quality of phone and web support not as important to customers, but hey, they have pretty good support. What's the reason why you wouldn't buy them? Well, delivery of new technology. And I'm just going to pause on that question because it's important. The question that's just how we're listing it here shortly. But that question when we ask providers is we say, rate your satisfaction with how well this vendor delivers new technology that meets your needs. So we're talking about development that meets your needs is really the question for customers here. And the bottom line here is that the customers say if they're weak at anything, Kinsero is not developing to meet our needs. So they've got a pretty stable product, decent support, but they're not developing to meet our needs. And so those are the reasons why you buy Kinsero and some of the weaknesses, right? Clairvia. Well, why would you buy Clairvia? You can see money's worth up here in the top right quadrant. Bottom line is that many customers who buy this were hearing, hey, this was a good amount This is more well-priced than API or Kronos, and we felt like we were getting a good deal with this. Again, somewhat similar to Kronos, quality of implementation would be kind of the big negative here. So why buy Clairvia? Well, customers reported that it's well-priced. McKesson. Why buy McKesson? Well, something that's important here to note is that we're not seeing a lot of high-rated areas that are important for customers. And most of the high-rated areas are less important. Most of the important areas are lower-rated. This would be an indication of a weaker fingerprint and an indication that there are some problems here. Now, you remember McKesson actually has been best in class. McKesson and Sauce typically has very high service ratings. Customers are very pleased with the service. But when asked about delivering technology that meets your needs, they rate that lower. And when asked about getting their money's worth, they rate that lower. And then they also report through their overall satisfaction that those areas matter to them. And somewhat indicative as to why McKesson would have high customer satisfaction. Essentially, customers are giving McKesson high ratings because of their service, but at the end of the day, through their ratings, you can tell that McKesson is not meeting their needs as well as they possibly would like them to. API's fingerprint. This is, by the way, a very strong fingerprint. You can see supports integration goals is up here in the top right, very strong. Some of the other things to notice here, why would you buy API? The delivery of new technology is right here. So customers report that one of the strengths of API is that they develop to meet our needs. And proactive service is also a relative strength for API. Hopefully, as you've seen this, you've been able to see that kind of what the customer fingerprint is. KLAS monitors over 500 different software products, over 900 different technology products. So there's lots of different fingerprints out there, and hopefully you've been able to see each customer base has different focuses, which is the x-axis there at the bottom, and rates high or low depending on the performance of the product. So there's infinitely many fingerprints out there. But is there some sort of fingerprint that's generally successful? And is there some sort of fingerprint that's generally less successful? A great question that we really wanted to answer as we started to use this new technique, this new tool. So one thing that we did is we said, well, KLAS has a somewhat decent idea of what products are selling well out in the industry and what products aren't. So let's just take those products, for instance, that are selling well and take a look at their fingerprint. Unsurprisingly, products that are selling well have some good strengths here. Overall product quality being the number one focus for customers, and being something that's rated relatively high. So products that are selling well are good, solid products. That's not too surprising, right? There is one question, though, that I want you to keep your eye on, because even poor selling products generally have overall product quality rated fairly high. Not quite as high, but fairly high. But keep your eye on delivery of new technology. Now if we look at, and supports integration goals. Now if we look at low sales products, overall product quality still is rated high, not quite as high, but still is rated high. If overall product quality slips down into the bottom right-hand quadrant, and it's not a developing product, a very new, immature product that's just on its way up, that's a very, very bad sign. And that happens in a small minority of products, but when it does, it's just a very bad sign about the product health overall. But if you look here, those two questions I asked you to keep an eye on, supports integration goals and delivery of new technology, you see the highest variation in those questions and where they land. High sales products have those two questions high, and low sales products have those two questions low. And where they land actually matters also. So let's just talk about it real quick. As I said, infinitely many fingerprints out there. Questions move around. There's a lot of different configurations. There's three questions that if you're wanting to use the fingerprint in order to understand possible future business success, sales and retention, keep your eye on three questions. Now the other questions matter too, and there's some significance there, but we don't have all day to go through everything. So we're going to talk about these three today, and really as far as looking at business success, these are the three to keep an eye on. First, delivery of new technology. That question, developing to meet your needs, if it is in the top right-hand quadrant, that means that customers are focused on development, so they're very engaged in the development and excited about it, and it's a relative strength. Products that have delivery of new technology in their upper right-hand quadrant are not always usually high satisfaction products. Actually, a majority of products that have delivery of new technology in their upper right-hand quadrant rate below the class average, which is really interesting. But even notwithstanding rating below the class average, if delivery of new technology is in your top right-hand quadrant, you are likely to see 72% higher sales and 57% lower turnover the subsequent year. Supports integration goals. Not too surprising that integration would be tied to sales and retention. The healthcare technology market, I think it's well understood that integration is a significant trump card in almost every decision. Well, if integration is rated highly, whether it's a focus for customers or whether it's not a focus, it is a good sign for the health of that product. Executive involvement. Now, not tied to sales, and typically KLAS doesn't see support really being highly correlated with new sales. Support is very highly correlated with retention, and in this case, the level of executive relationships for a product is significantly tied to customer retention the following year. However, you want to see executive involvement not being a focus for customers, which kind of makes you scratch your head for a minute. Why should it not be a focus? You want to see it in the top left-hand quadrant. And so it makes you ask, why should it not be a focus? If the relationship is a focus, oftentimes that means that there's big problems with the product, and there's just big problems overall. If it's a lot of times it becomes a focus during an acquisition, and acquisitions are typically times of significant uncertainty. Oftentimes it becomes a focus if there's a market shakeup, or it becomes a focus if there's really big product problems. What you really want, the profile of a successful product, is one where there's a strong relationship, but it's kind of an afterthought for customers, if you will. It's there. Customers rate it highly, but it's not a real focus for them. What is the focus? The development, where the product is moving, the strength of the product, and where it's going to. And that's what the real focus should be on. Anyway, let's just talk about each of these three really quick. We already talked about integration. It's well known, KLAS sees again and again, that great functionality is beat out by decent but integrated functionality. We've seen this play out in hundreds of provider decisions, thousands of provider decisions again and again, across many different market segments. Innovation results in sales. So this is the chart from the report. As you can see, innovators see much higher sales, and I want to liken this, just give an example of this real quick. In 2007, there was a JetBlue plane. If you work for JetBlue and you're on the phone, I apologize. I'm not trying to offend. There's a JetBlue flight that was going to take off from JFK and fly down to Mexico City. Bad weather, New York weather, winter flight, and the plane sat on the runway, on the tarmac, for 8 hours before customers got off. Now, 8 hours is not that much more time than it would have taken, given a little bit of a delay, for the plane to fly all the way down to Mexico City. However, customers, when they got off the plane, started to file lawsuits against JetBlue. And the reason why they started to file lawsuits, if you think about it, was not because they sat on a plane for 8 hours, was because when they got off, they were still in New York instead of Mexico City. I would liken this to the expectations of customers buying technology today. Customers buy onto a product with an expectation of getting off somewhere else in the future. We see in buying behavior that very often customers are not looking for just functionality today and service today. They're looking at where the product can go. Healthcare is an intensely competitive space and becoming more so all the time. And many customers are looking for a product that can meet their needs in the future and can give them the competitive edge in the future. If we look at about the 20% of products, there's about 20% of products that have delivery of new technology in the top right-hand quadrant. What are common similarities that we see in those type of products, of those high development products? What do we see? Now, it's not just development, and I really want to reiterate that. It is a combination of of vision, of focus development, of communication, and then visible progress. So if we line up all the different products that have delivery of new technology in their top right-hand quadrant, this is something that we see really common. I'm going to give a couple examples here. But the bottom line is that customers need to see where the product is going. They need to have really good communication from the vendor. And good doesn't mean hyped up. Good means realistic. Good means clear. And good means often and trustworthy. And then they need to see visible progress. And visible progress is really where you know if the communication is trustworthy or not, right? Is the vendor meeting are they moving in the right direction just as they've been saying that they were going to? Let me give some examples here, and I'm going to talk about what is the grand vision as we're hearing from customers, what is the communication, and what is the visible progress. McKesson Paragon. This is a product that has had delivery of new technology consistently in its top right-hand quadrant. Now, I mentioned that few products have overall product quality in the bottom right-hand quadrant, and overall product quality from McKesson Paragon is sort of right on the line. In this case, that's not too worrisome because this is a developing product and still very much on the rise. But for a number of years, delivery of new technology has been in the top right-hand quadrant. Actually, one complaint that some customers give is that this product is developing so quickly that they're having a hard time keeping up. So what is the grand vision? Customers report that the grand vision of where this product is going is that McKesson is wanting to on Microsoft technology, deliver a fully integrated product that has almost all of the functionality of the bigger systems out there, if you will. This is a community hospital information system. The bigger systems out there at a very low price. That is what the vision is. So every bit of development is working towards that vision, at least in customers' minds. And so when a new version comes out, customers expect development to be taking a path not towards necessarily creating new nifty functionality, not towards doing something that no one else has done, towards having the same functionality that's out there in the rest of the industry, but doing it at a good price and doing it at a very affordable out-of-the-box type of in an affordable out-of-the-box type of product. Customers are seeing visual solid progress. Over the past several years, this product has matured immensely, and customers are also reporting really good communication generally. It's not uncommon for us to hear exactly where development is from several customers within a few days of each other, and for them to essentially be telling us the exact same story. And so we can tell the communication is generally good with this product. Another product where we see delivery of new technology consistently in the top right-hand quadrant over time, eClinicalWorks EMR. Now, a very different product than McKesson Paragon. eClinicalWorks EMR rates a good 7-8 points lower than McKesson Paragon. A lot of customers report, as you can see, some of the lower rated questions there: quality of phone support, quality of implementation, proactive service. The service and touch from eClinicalWorks, you can see executive involvement there all the way over to the bottom left-hand quadrant. The service and touch from eClinicalWorks is generally not astonishing, if you will, to customers. It's not a real wow point, and a lot of times it's a real pain point. However, the product continues to move forward, and almost every new release brings new improvements, and customers are excited about the new releases. Let me give you an example. The latest release, version 9.5, I think there's actually one that's just about to come out, but the Meaningful Use release gave customers a Meaningful Use dashboard where they could see if they were in compliance with all the different aspects of Meaningful Use. That was amazing, and nobody else really had that dashboard the same way that eClinicalWorks did. So very much an industry-leading type of technology there, and exciting for a lot of customers. So what's the vision? eClinicalWorks is pushing towards having, you can see ease of use there, the most user-friendly out-of-the-box product on the market. What is the communication? The communication is hit and miss sometimes, but there's enough of it for customers to understand where the product is going. There's enough focus there in the vision for customers to realize where it's going. And then there's visible progress in almost every update moving the product forward. An example of a high development product this way. And eClinicalWorks 7 years ago maybe wouldn't even have made the footnote if KLAS were to go out and measure market share for ambulatory EMR products. We are wanting to measure the market share for ambulatory EMR products here in the future, and the footprint for eClinicalWorks is huge today. And so a good example of how development has driven adoption. Shifting gears, last of these three questions, relationships equal retention. So again, the chart out of the report, and the bottom line is that a good, as I mentioned before, a good solid relationship is sort of like a safety net. It's something that you want to see behind the scenes. So if you go and see a tightrope walker, the safety net is not really something that you're focused on, but you want it to be there. In the same way, a relationship should not really be the focus for customers, but they want it to be there. And if it's not there, it's just much more likely that the vendor will take a bad turn, and that in terms of retention, some customers will fall off the wire and leave the product. A good example of a product and a vendor who have made some real changes to executive relationship and seen those changes result in better retention would be Cerner. 3 to 4 years ago, Cerner, by the account of many customers, did a poor job of handling customer relationships. And there's a good number of stories, if you go back and look at our archived customer comments, a good number of stories of customers really feeling like that they didn't matter at all to Cerner, and that there was no sort of touch, there's no relationship, there's no communication there, or very little. And over the past several years, it's obvious through customer feedback that Cerner has made a huge push to improve their relationships. Now, are the relationships the focus for customers? No. Cerner delivers a lot of new technology. You can see delivery of new technology is rated high. The integration is a focus, and product quality is a real focus for customers. But the relationships have really developed behind the scenes and are very much there. So you can see executive involvement up here in the top left-hand quadrant. Customers report Cerner sitting down with them on a regular basis, walking through, talking about performance, and reviewing how well they're meeting their customer needs. And a lot more people who are assigned to understanding customers and to meeting their needs. Also, 4 years ago, at the same time, there was a good number of Cerner customers that KLAS was watching who were moving over from Cerner often to Epic, but were leaving Cerner. And in the past couple years, as relationships have tightened up, there's been some other improvements with code quality and things like that with Cerner Millennium. But really, the number of replacements has really died off, and very few customers today have any plans to leave Cerner. And most of them are generally very pleased with Cerner overall. So after talking about those three key questions to keep an eye on, just wanted to mention one last thing here today. If anything, just as the takeaway from this is that the customer fingerprint essentially allows you to stereotype a product. And stereotypes generally have such a bad connotation, right? But we all continue to use them. And the reason why we use them is because they work. And I love this call out, this picture. I've liked it for a long time. I think it's pretty funny. There's a number of other stereotypes that I could bring up, but I'm sure I would get in trouble as I brought those up. But the bottom line is that we all know different stereotypes, and we wouldn't use them if they didn't work. So let's talk about stereotypes and being able to stereotype vendors together. As we've already talked about, you can stereotype products and saying, hey, this is a high development product. This is a relationship product. This is a strong product quality product. One fingerprint that might be interesting, this is the fingerprint for Epic inpatient EMR. And the reason why I say might be interesting is that Epic has obviously changed, has had a lot of energy in the past several years. You can see their fingerprint, high executive involvement, delivery new technology is strong, supports integration goals is high also. And so you can see there's some areas to improve, such as ease of use and some of those type of areas. Money's worth is a big focus. And there's been a lot of talk, especially in recent months in the industry, around the cost of acquiring Epic. Anyway, who has a fingerprint that's similar to Epic? Something that we can do, and these numbers actually are the way that we could numerically categorize a fingerprint, is you can look at this set of, they're essentially the coordinates, if you will, for the fingerprint, and you can map that to other coordinates in the industry, and you can kind of get I don't know, if you will, like a barcode, and be able to compare different fingerprints. If we look and we want to say, okay, who looks like Epic in their customer fingerprint, something that we can do with any product, we thought maybe this one would be fun. There's 3 products out there that look in their fingerprint a good amount like Epic's fingerprint. First is Cerner. So we've already talked about Cerner some today. Cerner has made some changes over the past several years. If you look at their fingerprint, they've made some changes and look a lot more like Epic in their fingerprint than they did several years ago. Relationships would be one way in which they've done that. Development would be another way. And but in many ways, this full integrated product, they look a lot like Epic. Another interesting something that we're seeing is that Hyland software looks a lot like Epic. This might not be too surprising, as Hyland works oftentimes closely with Epic in Epic installs, and is the document management product for many Epic implementations. And as they work closely together, I don't know, it makes you wonder how much has rubbed off from Cerner to Hyland, or vice versa. And in order to make Hyland's customer fingerprint look a lot like Epic's. Next Gen would be another interesting example of a product that looks, Next Gen's EMR looks quite a bit like Epic Inpatient EMR's fingerprint. Both of these products are highly customizable. They're pretty big, and they're pretty big implementations to get in the door. Some customers would refer to each of those 2 products as somewhat bulky. And anyway, it's just interesting to talk about why would these products have somewhat similar fingerprints as we see with Epic. I'm going to pause here for a minute if there's any questions. Anyway, we appreciate your participation. If you have any questions about what we've shared so far today, you're welcome to bring them to myself. My email is taylor.davis@classresearch.com. We also have a general help email on our website that we're happy to respond to. We have one question from a customer, from a participant. Sorry. The question is whether, yes, can you use a customer fingerprint to categorize a market segment? That's a good question. Yes, you can. So you can look at aggregate fingerprints across, say, an entire market segment. We have done that. Let me give you an example. The PACS market, if we look at the fingerprint across the entire market, delivery of new technology is very much in the bottom right-hand quadrant. So on average, for many of these products, delivery of new technology is the bottom right-hand quadrant. Anybody who's been watching this market, I think, would agree that maps somewhat to what we've seen in the PACS market. We haven't seen a lot of really new development like we maybe saw 3-4 years ago. What does that mean for the market segment? In many ways, that means that the market is ripe for an innovator to change the game. There are some products that look like they're maybe pushing towards innovation a little bit more. Fuji maybe would be a good example of a product that has delivery of new technology higher, and there's been some more innovation towards a lighter platform. Anyway, yes, looking at the fingerprint for a market segment, sometimes not horribly helpful, but in some cases quite helpful. A great question. Thank you. We can just pause for any other questions. Well, we don't see any other questions coming across. Thank you so much for your time and participation today. If you have any questions, as I said, please let us know. We hope that today's discussion of this new tool has been helpful for you, as well as many of the findings that underlie the tool. So whether or not class feedback through class is something that's helpful or not to you, our hope is that just the reasoning behind some of what makes up the customer fingerprint, the importance of development, the importance of integration, and the importance of relationships helps those you vendors in this industry who really are carrying forward the technology and doing so much in this industry. Hopefully that helps bring some enlightenment about what customers are looking for and some areas to really focus. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.